My mother's hand landed on my shoulder harder than it needed to. Not a touch, a shove, the kind that announced ownership, like she was moving furniture that had been placed in the wrong spot. We were in the banquet hall of the Riverside Country Club, the same place where she'd married Robert 10 years ago. Crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, a towering cake with 60 candles waiting to be lit. Her birthday party. The guest list read like a catalog of people who'd watched me disappear from family photos, one Christmas card at a time. I'd barely pulled out my chair at the head table when my mother yanked it backward. The metal legs screeched against the polished floor. My hip caught the table edge. Champagne flutes rattled. The room didn't go silent immediately. It took 3 heartbeats for the conversations to die, for heads to turn, for everyone to realize something ugly was about to happen in a room full of white linen and expensive flowers. My mother pointed across the table at Madison, my half-sister, who stood there in a silk dress that cost more than my rent. "That seat," my mother said, voice sharp and clear enough to carry past the centerpieces, "is for Robert's real daughter. Move." I didn't move right away. Not because I was stubborn, because my brain needed a moment to accept that she'd just said that in front of 75 people. Robert sat at the far end of the table, wine glass frozen halfway to his mouth, face blank. Madison's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile but wasn't surprise either. She'd been waiting for this. My mother's sister, Aunt Carol, looked down at her plate. My cousins suddenly found their phones fascinating. The country club manager, a man I'd known since I was 12, when my real father had hosted my birthday here, turned away like he hadn't seen anything. My mother leaned closer. Her perfume was too sweet, expensive. "Sarah," she said quietly, intimately, "the way you speak to someone you're about to erase. You don't belong at this table. You never did." Heat flooded my face. My hands went cold. I could have screamed. I could have asked why. I could have reminded everyone that my father, her first husband, had paid for her to join this country club in the first place. But I knew my mother. If I cried, she'd call me dramatic. If I argued, she'd call me bitter. If I stayed, she'd make it worse. So I did the only thing that wouldn't give her the performance she wanted. I stood slowly. I picked up my purse from the back of the chair I'd occupied for approximately 40 seconds. I looked at the cake, at the champagne tower, at the ice sculpture of a swan that must have cost a fortune. Then I looked at my mother and said, very calmly, "Happy birthday, Mom." Madison slid into my seat before I'd taken 2 steps. Robert finally set down his wine glass, but didn't speak. My mother smoothed her dress and smiled at the guests closest to her, as if she'd just handled an unpleasant but necessary piece of business. I walked through the banquet hall without rushing. Past the gift table where my present sat, a framed photo of my mother and my father from before he died, back when her smile and pictures still reached her eyes. Past the bar where my old high school friend was tending, his face carefully neutral. Out into the hallway where the air conditioning hit my flushed skin like a slap. I sat in my car in the parking lot for 20 minutes, hands on the steering wheel, not turning the key. My hip ached where it hit the table. The pain was dull but insistent, the kind that would bloom into a bruise by morning. I took out my phone. I didn't call anyone. I didn't post about it. I opened my camera and took a photo of the red mark already forming near my hip bone. Then another from a different angle, with the country club visible through my car window in the background. Then I opened my notes app and typed 4 lines. Mom's 60th birthday party. Mother shoved me, removed me from head table. Witnesses, 75 plus guests. Robert and Madison present. I saved it with a timestamp and drove home in silence. Sleep didn't come easy. My body kept replaying the sound of the chair scraping, the look on Madison's face, the weight of 75 people watching me leave. I woke at 6 to pounding on my apartment door. Not a neighbor knock. An official knock. I pulled on a robe and opened the door. A woman stood in the hallway, clipboard in hand, expression professionally blank. "Sarah Mitchell?" she asked. "Yes," I said. She held out an envelope. Thick, official, with a return address that made my stomach drop. King County Superior Court. "Sign here," she said. I signed. She handed me a yellow receipt and walked away without another word. I closed the door and stood there, staring at the envelope. It felt heavier than paper should feel. I looked at the return address again. I hadn't filed anything. I hadn't reported last night. I hadn't called anyone. And yet here it was, waiting for me at 6 in the morning, less than 12 hours after my mother shoved me. I opened it carefully, like it might contain something that could hurt me worse than last night. The first page had my name at the top, and a case number underneath. Then I read the line that made my blood freeze. Petition for restraining order and no contact directive. Petitioner, Linda Mitchell. Respondent, Sarah Mitchell. My mother had filed an emergency protective order against me. The document claimed I'd been increasingly erratic and verbally abusive, that I'd made threats against family members, that I posed an immediate danger to her, Robert, and Madison. She'd checked boxes that transformed me into someone dangerous, unpredictable behavior, history of aggression, violent outbursts. She requested an emergency order that would bar me from the country club, from her home, from Madison's apartment, and from any family events. The filing timestamp was from last night, 11:47 p.m. 3 hours after I'd left her party. My mother had gone home, probably still wearing her birthday tiara, and filed court papers to have me legally removed from her life. The hearing was scheduled for today, Monday morning, 9 a.m. I had 3 hours to become a file that could survive her. I didn't waste time being shocked. I got dressed, grabbed the envelope, and drove to the 24-hour urgent care clinic on Mercer Street. The waiting room smelled like antiseptic and burnt coffee. A television played the morning news on mute. When they called my name, I followed the nurse down a hallway and lifted my shirt without being asked. The bruise had darkened overnight, purple and yellow, roughly the size of a table edge. "What happened?" the nurse asked, her tone careful. "My mother shoved me at a party," I said, keeping my voice steady. My hip hit the table. She didn't ask why. She didn't ask what I'd done to deserve it. She wrote it down and took my vital signs. The physician assistant came in, examined the bruise, pressed gently along the tender area. "Contusion," she said, then looked at my face. "Any dizziness? Did you fall?" "No," I said. "Just shoved." She nodded and typed into her computer. "Do you feel safe?" I hesitated. "I feel safer with documentation," I finally said. She printed the discharge paperwork and handed it to me with a look that said she'd seen this before. The page said exactly what I needed. Contusion consistent with impact. Patient reports being shoved by family member at social event. No loss of consciousness. Patient stable. I took a photo of it right there in the hallway, then drove straight to the courthouse, King County Superior Court. Security checkpoint. Metal detector. Fluorescent lights that made everyone look tired. I found the clerk's window and slid the petition under the glass. "I was served this morning," I said. "I need to file a response." The clerk, a man with reading glasses on a chain, pulled up the case. His expression didn't change, but his typing slowed. "Emergency protective order hearing," he said. "You have the right to respond." "I need the full filing and all exhibits," I said. He printed the packet and slid it under the window. The first exhibit made my hands shake. A screenshot of a text message, supposedly from me to Madison. It said, "Tell Mom if she embarrasses me again, she'll regret it. I'm done playing nice." The screenshot was labeled Exhibit A, Threat. I stared at it and felt ice settle in my chest because I'd never sent that text. The phone number was wrong. My contact photo in the screenshot was from 5 years ago, before I'd cut my hair. The timestamp format didn't match my current phone's operating system. It was a fake, a sloppy, stupid fake. But it was in a court document. The second exhibit was worse. A printed email, allegedly from me to Robert's work email, saying I was going to make him pay for stealing my father's life insurance money. I'd never sent it. Robert worked at a law firm. He had the resources to fabricate an email and no one would question it. I looked up at the clerk. "Can I file a response today?" "Yes," he said. "But the judge may issue a temporary order if the evidence suggests immediate danger." "I have medical documentation," I said, "and I have reason to believe the exhibits are fabricated." His eyes flicked to the envelope in my hand, then back to my face. He slid a form under the glass. "Fill this out. You can attach whatever you want the judge to see." I sat on a hard plastic bench and wrote my response in clear, factual sentences. "Mother physically removed me from family event. I left immediately. No threats made. I have medical documentation of injury. Exhibits appear fabricated. Phone number and email format inconsistent with my accounts." I attached the urgent care paperwork and the photos with timestamps. When I returned the packet to the clerk, he stapled it, stamped it, and said, "Courtroom 3, 8:45 a.m. I had 30 minutes. When I walked into the courthouse hallway, I saw them. My mother, dressed like she was going to brunch, hair perfect, face composed in an expression of wounded dignity. Robert stood beside her in a suit, looking grim and responsible. Madison was there too, phone in hand, already recording something for her Instagram story probably. And next to them stood a man in a charcoal suit carrying a leather briefcase, an attorney. Of course they had an attorney. My mother saw me and her expression shifted into something soft and sad, like I was a problem she'd tried so hard to fix. Robert put his hand on her shoulder, protective. Madison looked at me with the same expression she'd worn when she took my chair. Vindication. I didn't walk toward them. I walked past them, keeping my eyes forward, because proximity is permission, and I wasn't giving them anything. Sarah, my mother called out, voice carrying down the hallway, we're trying to help you. You don't have to make this harder. I didn't turn around. I sat in the courtroom on the respondent's side, my folder on my lap, and waited. When the bailiff called us to order and the judge entered, everyone rose. Judge Patricia Ramirez. I'd looked her up on the courthouse website during my 30-minute wait. 20 years on the bench, former prosecutor, reputation for not tolerating nonsense. My mother's attorney spoke first. Smooth, practiced, calling my mother a concerned parent, and me increasingly unstable. He painted a picture of a woman who'd tried everything to help her troubled daughter, who'd finally been forced to seek court intervention after credible threats of violence. The judge listened without expression, then looked at the petition. Miss Mitchell, she said, looking at my mother. What specifically happened that prompted you to file an emergency petition at 11:47 p.m. on a Sunday night? My mother dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. Her voice trembled slightly, perfectly calibrated. Your Honor, yesterday was my 60th birthday. My daughter came to my party and became verbally abusive. She made a scene, threatened my husband and younger daughter, and stormed out. I was terrified she might come back and hurt someone. The judge's eyes moved to me. Miss Sarah Mitchell. Did you threaten anyone at this party? No, Your Honor, I said. I left. Do you have evidence to support your version of events? Yes, Your Honor. I stood and handed the medical documentation to the bailiff, who carried it to the judge. Judge Ramirez read it slowly. Then she looked at the petition again, specifically at the section where my mother claimed I'd been increasingly aggressive and physical. Miss Linda Mitchell, the judge said, looking at my mother. You're asserting your daughter was physically aggressive at this party, yet this medical record indicates she has a bruise consistent with being shoved. My mother's attorney jumped in. Your Honor, she could have injured herself after leaving the party to make it look like. The judge held up one hand. Counselor, I'm asking your client a direct question. She looked at my mother again. Did you remove your daughter from the party? My mother's perfectly composed face flickered. I asked her to move to a different table, she said carefully. She was causing a disturbance. By sitting down? The judge asked. The question hung in the air. My mother's attorney tried again. Your Honor, there's context here. Family dynamics that I'm sure there is, Judge Ramirez said. But I'm looking at an emergency petition filed at almost midnight on a Sunday, claiming immediate danger, with exhibits that I need to examine more closely. She picked up the screenshot of the alleged text message. This text. You're claiming your daughter sent this? Yes, my mother said. To Madison. She threatened us. The judge looked at the screenshot for a long moment. What phone did this screenshot come from? My mother hesitated. From Madison's phone. May I see the original device? The judge asked. My mother's attorney stood. Your Honor, we can provide that at a later. No, the judge said firmly. If you're asking me to restrict someone's freedom based on a threat, I need to see the underlying evidence. Today. There was a pause. Then the judge looked at Madison. Miss Madison Chen, do you have your phone with you? Madison glanced at Robert, then at my mother's attorney. Yes, she said. Bring it to the bailiff, please, the judge said. Madison walked forward, handed her phone to the bailiff. The judge looked at it, scrolled for a moment, then looked up. This screenshot shows a text allegedly sent 3 weeks ago, she said. Can you pull up your text thread with your half-sister? Madison's face went pale. I think I deleted it, she said. You deleted a threatening text message that you were using as evidence in an emergency court filing? The judge asked. The courtroom went very quiet. I was upset, Madison said weakly. I didn't think. What's your half-sister's current phone number? The judge asked. Madison rattled off a number. The judge looked at me. Miss Sarah Mitchell, is that your current number? No, Your Honor, I said. That was my number from 4 years ago. I changed it when I moved. The judge set the phone down. So this screenshot shows a number that isn't currently in use, and the original message thread has been conveniently deleted. She looked at my mother's attorney. Counselor, do you have any other evidence? The attorney shuffled papers. Your Honor, we have the email. Let's look at that, the judge said. She pulled up Exhibit B, read it, then looked at Robert. Mr. Chen, you're listed as the recipient of this alleged threatening email. Do you have the original in your inbox? Robert cleared his throat. I believe I archived it, he said. Pull it up now, please, the judge said. Robert took out his phone, typed, scrolled. His jaw tightened. It seems to have been deleted from my archive, he said. Judge Ramirez sat back in her chair. Let me make sure I understand, she said slowly. You have a text message from a disconnected number with no original thread. You have an email that's been deleted. And you have a respondent with medical documentation showing she was injured at the very event where you claim she was aggressive. She looked at my mother. Miss Mitchell, who else was at this party? About 75 people, my mother said quietly. And how many of them are here to testify that your daughter was threatening or violent? Silence. Your Honor, my mother's attorney began. Witnesses were hesitant to get involved in family, the judge interrupted. There was nothing to witness, because it didn't happen the way your client claims. That's when the side door opened. A man in a navy suit walked in, carrying a briefcase. Not young, maybe 65, with silver hair and the kind of presence that comes from decades of courtrooms. He approached the bailiff and handed him a document. Your Honor, the bailiff said, Mr. Harrison is here. He says it's regarding the James Mitchell Family Trust. My heart stopped. The James Mitchell Family Trust. My father's trust. I felt my mother go rigid 3 rows behind me. Judge Ramirez looked at the man. State your name and purpose. David Harrison, the man said. I'm the trustee for the James Mitchell Family Trust. I'm here because this protective order petition directly affects trust property and trust beneficiaries. The judge's eyebrows rose. Explain. Mr. Harrison's voice was calm, clinical. James Mitchell died 12 years ago, leaving a substantial trust. The trust contains specific provisions regarding his daughter, Sarah Mitchell, and his widow, Linda Mitchell. He handed a document to the bailiff. This is a certified copy of the trust amendment, filed 6 months before Mr. Mitchell's death. The judge broke the seal and began reading. I watched her expression change as she moved down the page. She looked up at my mother, then at me, then back at the document. Miss Linda Mitchell, she said, did you know your late husband amended his trust to include a conduct clause? My mother's face had gone white. A what? A clause, Mr. Harrison said, that suspends your benefits and residential rights if you publicly reject or humiliate his daughter Sarah in a way that damages her reputation or dignity. The courtroom went absolutely silent. Judge Ramirez kept reading. This amendment states that if Linda Mitchell removes, excludes, or publicly rejects Sarah Mitchell from family events or gatherings in a manner witnessed by others, particularly through physical removal or humiliating statements, her trust distributions are immediately suspended, and her right to occupy the family home is terminated. My mother stood up, face flushed. That's not James would never, it's notarized, Mr. Harrison said. It's witnessed, and it's filed with the county recorder. He handed another document to the bailiff. This is my formal notice to the court and to Miss Linda Mitchell that based on witness reports from Saturday's party, the conduct clause has been triggered. Judge Ramirez looked at me. Miss Sarah Mitchell, did you know about this clause? No, Your Honor, I said honestly. I had no idea. The judge turned back to my mother. Miss Mitchell, you filed an emergency protective order claiming your daughter is dangerous, but your late husband anticipated that you might mistreat her and built consequences into his estate plan. She tapped the document. This changes the entire context of your petition. My mother's attorney was frantically whispering to her. Robert had his hand on her arm, trying to keep her seated. Madison looked like she might cry. Mr. Harrison spoke again. Your Honor, I have 3 witnesses from the party willing to testify about what they observed. They're in the hallway. Bring them in, the judge said. 3 people entered. My old high school friend Jake, who'd been bartending, the country club manager, and Aunt Carol, my mother's own sister. They were sworn in one by one. Jake spoke first. I was tending bar. I saw Linda Mitchell physically shove Sarah Mitchell away from the head table and tell her the seat was for Robert's real daughter. Sarah left without arguing. She didn't threaten anyone. The country club manager confirmed it. I witnessed the entire interaction. Miss Sarah Mitchell was removed from her seat. She collected her belongings and departed. There was no verbal or physical aggression from her. Aunt Carol was last. Her voice shook, but she spoke clearly. My sister shoved my niece in front of 75 people and humiliated her because she wanted Madison to sit at the head table instead. Sarah didn't fight back. She just left. I was ashamed to watch it. My mother was crying now. Real tears, not performative ones. Judge Ramirez waited until Aunt Carol finished, then looked at my mother's attorney. Counselor, would you like to withdraw this petition? The attorney looked at my mother, then at the judge. Your Honor, given the circumstances, yes, we'd like to withdraw. Motion granted, the judge said. Then she looked at me. Miss Sarah Mitchell, the emergency petition against you is dismissed. You're free to go. She turned to my mother. Miss Linda Mitchell, you filed a petition containing what appears to be fabricated evidence. You wasted this court's time and resources. I'm referring this matter to the prosecutor's office for review regarding potential false reporting and perjury. My mother made a sound like she'd been hit. The judge continued. And regarding the trust matter, that's civil, not criminal, but Mr. Harrison, I assume you'll be proceeding with enforcement? Yes, Your Honor, Mr. Harrison said. Notice has been served. Miss Linda Mitchell has 30 days to vacate the family home. Wait, my mother gasped. That house, I've lived there for 30 years. You lived there as James Mitchell's widow with trust-granted occupancy rights, Mr. Harrison said. Those rights are now terminated per the conduct clause you violated. Judge Ramirez stood. We're adjourned. The bailiff called everyone to rise. I stood there, holding my folder, trying to process what had just happened. Mr. Harrison approached me as people filed out. Miss Mitchell, we should talk, he said. Your father was very specific about his wishes. He wanted to make sure you were protected. I don't understand, I said. Why didn't anyone tell me? He said, if you knew, you might feel obligated to tolerate mistreatment to protect your mother's security. He wanted the clause to be a genuine consequence, not a threat you had to manage. I felt tears for the first time that day. Not sad tears. Something else. My father had known. 12 years ago, probably watching my mother start to favor Madison, probably seeing how things were going to go, he'd built me a safety net I never knew existed. That afternoon, I sat in Mr. Harrison's office and learned the details. The family home would transfer to me. My mother would receive a small monthly stipend from the trust, enough to rent an apartment, but nothing more. Madison got nothing because she wasn't my father's child and had participated in the humiliation. Robert got nothing because he'd stood by and watched. Your father left you a letter, Mr. Harrison said, handing me an envelope. He wrote it the day he amended the trust. I opened it with shaking hands. Dad's handwriting. Familiar. Steady. Sarah. If you're reading this, it means your mother finally showed you who she really is in front of people who can confirm it. I'm sorry I won't be there to protect you myself. I know Linda. I know how she operates. I built this clause because I wanted you to know that you matter, that you were loved, and that you don't have to accept cruelty from people who should protect you. The house is yours. The trust is yours. Build a life that honors the good parts of who you are. Love, Dad. I sat there in that office and cried for 20 minutes while Mr. Harrison politely worked on other files and pretended not to notice. 2 months later, I moved into my childhood home. My mother and Robert moved to a 2-bedroom apartment in Tacoma. Madison stopped posting family photos on Instagram. Aunt Carol called to apologize for not speaking up sooner, and I told her I understood. The house felt different now, lighter somehow. I repainted my old bedroom, planted a garden my mother had never allowed, and hosted a small dinner party where I invited the people who'd testified for me. Jake brought wine. The country club manager brought flowers. Aunt Carol brought old photo albums of my father. On what would have been my dad's 70th birthday, I sat on the porch he'd built, drinking coffee and watching the sunrise, and I whispered, "Thank you," because he'd taught me the most important lesson. Sometimes the people who love you protect you in ways you never see until you need it most. And sometimes the only way to win is to let the system do what it was built to do, prove the truth. Records beat stories, every single time.